Okay. Chaim asked a good question at the end of the shiur. They said, Mi kel kamocha. That's what we're learning. Mi kel kamocha nושא עון. We spent a lot of time trying to understand the midah of Mi kel kamocha, but the question Chaim asked, why is it in the lashon of she'ela? Ein kelikenu, ein kadanenu, ein kamashenu, ein kamocha ve'elakim Hashem, ein kimasecha. It's Mi kel kamocha. Why does if you're talking about the midah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, why the lashon she'ela? That was the question?
Yeah, good question.
Good question, yeah. I'll add on to the question. We say in davening every day, Micha, Moicha, Behelim Hashem. So also a lashon of she'ela. What do you say, Yechiel?
No, it's like ma.
Sorry.
Also we find ma.
Find what?
The lashon of ma. And you see the Shalom points out that sometimes ma is the question. Sometimes is ma gadu ma'asecha.
Okay, but me doesn't work that way. It's ma.
Me doesn't work that way.
Nachnu ma is special. Ma is, it could be either way. Me is not either way. Here's a question.
It could be that the Mikamocha, which is saying davening, is by the shiur. By the shiur, Moshe Rabbeinu was trying to encourage Bnei Yisrael to answer. So there was a dialogue. But that
Mikamocha before Shimon Esrei?
Yeah, that comes from the shiur. But that one that's not help us for Yudim Amidos. So that explains why the Mikamocha.
I mean, that was like a song back and forth.
Yeah.
On them smears. Yeah.
It can also be a rhetorical question.
Can be, but why?
We know the answer.
No, but why? You know, the rest of them are not in rhetoric. Nושא עון, me nושא עון. Like why dafke by Mi kel kamocha it is a rhetorical. Not it could be a rhetorical. It is a nobody's expecting an answer. That is the midah of Hashem of Mi kel kamocha. I don't know if I know the answer, but let me just offer a little bit of help here. That specifically, Mi kel kamocha el, Mi kamocha be'elim Hashem. So we see el is a lashon chol, el could be a lashon kodesh. Mi kel kamocha, mi kamocha be'elim Hashem. Right? You don't say every time you say el, it's not a kel, ginger el. It's not a shem kodesh be'etzem. What does it mean? It means a huge amount of power. A huge amount of power. The Gemara darshans mi kamocha be'elim Hashem, mi kamocha be'ilmim Hashem. That even that to make yourself, the Kayin explains in the Gemara there, that in order to make the real power is to be able to be quiet when necessary, which is very nogei l'inyanenu. But the alimut and elaim is a very similar term. So what we're talking about here is a comparison, I believe, and therefore it begins to make sense that it's a lashon of question because it's a comparison in our mind of different types of power. There's power. There's people with power, whether it's because of by virtue of their money, their political position, their whatever their situation, their personality, their yichus, their malchus. There are people with a huge amount of power, and when we look at power amongst ourselves and amongst other people. It's very hard, it's very difficult to find someone that has power and doesn't use that power, even if they use it correctly, or use it for good purposes, but doesn't use it and therefore use it to what's the word I'm looking for? To be able to overbear the other person. Overbear. Is that the word? Dominate the other person. So okay, could be it's tov. See, I want to without the please don't be choshesh me for gaiva because it's not me, it's Tomer Devorah. I don't. But this every year I learn the sefer, and every year two things happen. I become very humble by what he's asking us to do. I'm humbled by it. But also I understand it better, even though I've given the shiur before, like just the whole year of dealing with issues and people and my own issues and crazy things. I get a deeper insight into what we're really talking about. One of the things that I What I'm asking you for now is I don't because I was like everybody comes in with a lot of Torah here and a lot of Musar and a lot of for a minute just like delete and just try to listen to what he's saying to us without trying to fit it into something that we know already. That's my challenge, and I just want you to do that for a second. Well, let me just give me a moment, okay? I just want to say this that one of the things I noticed over the last number of months is that almost everything that happens is political. What I mean by that is that if you ask somebody to talk to so and so for you, can you help me out with this thing? So yeah, he owes me one. It could be a good thing, could you call so and so for a donation? So yeah, well, I gave a donation to his cause, so he has to give a donation to my cause. There are whole families that work on a tit for tat basis. I did this for you. Not that it's necessarily spoken. Classy people don't say these things. Unclassy people do, and there's a lot of unclassy people around. But in this country, you find it's very, very like I find it like astonishing. How boorish it is. Like if you don't do this, I'm going to do that. But the point is that when even if you're more sophisticated and classy, you don't know which is worse anymore. But everything is about not everything. I mean, not saying everything, but so much of domestic life, business life, political life, religious life. So much of it is what I'm calling political, and political is using your whatever power you have, taking inventory of your strength and your power and your clout, and using that to your benefit or even to the benefit of somebody else. If you're doing fundraising and you ask a wealthy person to call people, you get further than if you call yourself. Why? Because they have more clout, they business together like this. So you got to do those things. That's the way it works. I'm not particularly good at it, as those of you know, right? Not my koach. It's not my koach, but it's not a. There's a lack of emes in it. There's a lack of emes in it, and it's a very difficult thing because all of a sudden you're compromising your MS to be able to accomplish a certain goal. And why isn't it MS? Because there's a certain, it's not merit based. It's not virtue based. It's not deservant based. It's based on
give and take.
Oh, chesed shel emes is MS. Used to be. And, somebody was telling me that not here in Beit Shemesh, but in general the world, like if you're into it, like the most political. Somebody was just telling me this, that the most political like Jewish entity is not the shul or the mikveh, it's the Chevra Kadisha. Like it's a very political because there's a lot of covenant and money in it and schusim and like you can't get into it unless you know this one, unless you know that one. Like hello, the whole thing is supposed to be chesed shalom. It's like what's hakara over here? So it used to be, yeah. But my point is, like, I want to be positive, not try to be negative. The Bereishis is, I'm just making an observation. The Bereishis is that we're all like political animals, and we're all thinking like, how can I get this done with it, this job? How can I get this? Even I think even our marriages are like very political. Like everything, like if you want something and wife doesn't want something, or vice versa, a political situation ensues. Immediately, you have a political situation, and like who owes what to who. So it's not based on, it's based on power. So here you have a micha mocha. Bo'elim Hashem, have you ever seen, and this is the question that's being posed, have you ever seen a source of power that doesn't use that power to get what they want? Have you ever seen such a thing? What then is the purpose of power? Have you ever seen that? Micha mocha Bo'elim Hashem, only Hashem. That when we say mi kel kamocha, the kedusha of kel is such, like we learned yesterday, that the ultimate power, because every single thing we do has to be energized by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like this light is being energized by the electricity and controlled by the switch. Shut the switch, no light. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu is holding that switch, and he's holding whatever metaphor you want, the switch to the light, the oxygen mask on your back, whatever, and more. Like there's no thought, there's no movement, and we see HaKadosh Baruch Hu has the power. It says this is territory from Yeravim and Nevat. You see that he has the power because he was able to, when he wanted to. This is a chiddush apparently, that it's not like he made some kind of a system and he stuck in it. When he wanted to freeze Yeravim's hand, he froze Yeravim's hand. So there's that. So where do you find amongst he who has power? Where do you find in other words, the question is it's not an ein kamocha. That's the answer. But mi kamocha is the Navi charges us to compare the alimut of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to the alimut of every other story. I mean, even in nature, the predator wins. Even in from an evolutionary point of view, the predator wins. So we become predators. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu Eloi Kayin, and the reason why he's not that way is because his power is not a way to do this and that. He's the powerful unto himself. So what I ended up with by saying yesterday is that the midah of Mikel Kamocha, as the Tomer Devorah explains, it makes sense to me how it's makbil to the midah of Hashem that Hashem told Moshe. And Hashem Kel Racham V'Chanun is the first midah, Mikel Kamocha is the first midah. What's the midah of Hashem? That it says twice Hashem, Rabbeinu Tavis Basber, being Mosif and Rashi, that Ani Hashem Koidem Achet, Ani Hashem Acher Achet means that Ani Hashem Loi Shanisi. That's the pasuk. Ani Hashem Koidem Achet, Ani Hashem Acher Achet, Ani Hashem Loi Shanisi, says the pasuk, meaning that sometimes you have a rachamim, which is a reaction to the situation in front of me. That's good. That's better than no rachamim. There's a nebuch at the door. I'm not going to start figuring out whether he should be working for a living. Shouldn't be working for a living. Whether I get it for, whether he has more money than I do. Right now it's a nebuch. I'm going to help the person. That's good. That's a good thing. But that's not godly. The godly thing is not to react. The godly thing is to be. So the rachamim of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not a reaction. Hashem is not a reaction to the situation at hand. So Hashem's the discussion here, Moshe Rabbeinu and Hashem, is not, Nebuch Yisrael built an eagle, Nebuch, they went through Mitzrayim, they're slave. All of those things can be slugged up. Yeah, but they also come from Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaacov. They also had experienced so many miracles. But so Hashem's tells Moshe how to argue. Hashem tells Moshe how to argue. Hashem. If they're in trouble, this is the argument. The argument that the Rachmanis of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is be'etzem. It's not a Rachmanis which is reactive to some kind of a situation. Now try that on for size, because what is it means to say that we have to be in essence tov, in essence rachamim. It's very difficult the moment that we have any power. So he's Kel, we're El. We all have our El in us. So if you figure out where you have your power, it's not just about not abusing your power. It's about not even using your power. It's about not even using your power. It's about understanding that it's all about doing what's right and doing what's chesedic, and if you help somebody, help somebody. Baruch Hashem, Hashem gave the koach to help. It's such a fine line. It's such a delicate thing, but it's a whole difference in a way of living, of the Mikel Kamocha. And to be mistabik in the Tzelem Elikim, to be a Tzelem Elikim, means that we are be'etzem tov. Hashem, even Kodem Achet. We're be'etzem have the ability to have rachamim, even if it's not being reactive. Because in truth, we shouldn't be reacting to anything. In truth, we should never be reacting. Reacting is wrong. There's a yadua, so the Igros Chazadish, there's a yadua a story about in Bnei Brak that happened 50 years ago that a bunch of people there was some talmidim of the Panovich, I think it was. There was a talmidim walking and some rough guys came and started to make fun of them, Haredim, yeshiva, blah blah blah, whatever they did in those days, and one of the yeshiva bacher punched this other guy. He just punched him out and they ran away. And it came to the ears of the Chazon Ish. The Chazon Ish said, what did you do? He punched a guy, yeshiva bacher punched a guy like the Chazon Ish didn't understand. So he said, this is what he said, this is what I said, and you have to teach him. He gave him a whole. So the Chazon Ish said, no, it's not right. It's not right. So he said, it's not right. So the guy said, well, how should a Ben Torah react to such a situation? Profound question. The Chazon Ish answer is a Ben Torah doesn't react. No, there's no such thing as somebody pushing my buttons and be reacting like I don't have any buttons. My buttons are from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I am what I am. High madrega. It's a high madrega, but it's a higher madrega than getting the fancy new kind of ritzulas on your pillow. This is a very high madrega. It's a madrega of I'm not going to be reactive. I'm just going to do the right thing. And it doesn't mean that it's a midas hadid, because dafka, the right thing, is Hashem is midas harachamim, not the right thing. Well, this is what you deserve, not what you deserve. The rachamim, even the rachamim, is intrinsic to the person. So I just my point is, and again, please forgive me, I'm just cosering for my own. We have to stop being political. Period. It's just there's way too much of that going on. And again, I don't only mean in the political chambers. At home, and shul. You have to stop. It's not you can't lord over another person. You meet people that they have some power, like they don't miss a trick. They don't miss a trick. They use it to the fullest. It's not the derech HaTorah. It's not the derech HaTorah. The derech HaTorah is to do what's right. Imagine society would be such that everybody did what was right. So I'm not a nar. I understand that it doesn't work that way. Sometimes you have to be political. I'm not, but be'etzem, it's a chasar and emes. And the only emes is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and then us, we're emes, because ultimately, this is where we stand. The hakdama sheba hakdamas to the whole Sefer Tomer Devorah is that when you talk about these things, people say like I'm only human. That's like the usual. Human is huge. Human is huge. Human is not a tree. You're not an apple, not a monkey. Human is huge, because human means that you're made mitzvah l'elakim. Human means that you're much like the midos of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, at least some midos of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like right here in this world. It's like I'm only the president of IBM. Human is big. Human is a very big thing. So it's a good thing to remind ourselves that we're only human, or we're human. Because human is the ambassadors of HaKadosh Baruch Hu B'hai Alma. So that's what I wanted to be bavar about. I don't know if it completely answers the question, but it just the perspective.
It's such a pella.
I think it's a pella because you see it nowhere.
And it's more of a pella than all the other midos?
Yes, because I think so. That's we didn't learn all the other midos, so we don't know the answer to that. But it's a pella that you can understand. And that's why the question for it, to sum it up, only by way of comparison. Like why don't we say by any other mita, be kamocha be nושא עון Hashem? Like why be kamocha be elim Hashem? It's only when you're talking about power that we have a question, because it's only by comparison and that you can understand the godless here, and it's huge. It's huge. It's a life changer in everybody's life. Not to be political, just be. You understand what I mean by political? You understand by like we owe each other. There's a new currency of favors. There's a currency of owing. It's a different.
Where's the cheshbon?
Yeah, where's the cheshbon?
What do we get? How's it going to play out?
Always with the cheshbon. Always with the cheshbon. That's power. That's a currency of power, whatever it is.
The gematria of me is 50, which is the level that we can't reach. Only Hashem is at that level.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you.
So we're saying Hashem.
Like Gil saying.
Yeah.
Me is also Madrega.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you got to find that in the Zohar or something.
Hashem is one midah. We're saying.
Where? Talks of me?
I don't know if on this. I don't know if on this.
Yeah.
Hashem is one midah. That's what we're saying, because it's nothing
Oh,
to do
so
with
if
the
you
thing.
count, that's what I was saying yesterday. If you count, it's only one midah. It's a midah of rachamim, but the first time you can't. It's like a question. You can't understand the Hashem kodem achet. You can't understand the Hashem achet until you understand the Hashem kodem achet. It's a touch of the rachamim.
Because it has nothing to do with the
Yeah, so it's machlokes Rav Shira and Tap. But I was saying, if you learn that it's one midah, like you can't understand that if it would just be an independent concept of rachamim. So we know what rachamim is, but once you understand there's rachamim acher achet, that's begala the rachamim acher achet. So it's a different type of rachamim.
It's a rachamim that has nothing to do with the chet.
Right. Nothing to do with the person. Be'etzim, I have rachamim. I can live in a vacuum. It's rachamim in a vacuum. I can be the only one in the world that have rachamim. I can be the only one in the world that have rachamim. I can be on a desert island and have rachamim. Just my metzias of rachamim. It's a metzias. It's not something that's being pulled from me. But they Torah don't react. If you find yourself reacting, then it's wrong. If something is getting on your nerves, it's wrong. If something is getting you angry, it's wrong. Nothing wrong with getting angry, but it's not that somebody else got me angry. It's avodah zarah. It's avodah zarah because it comes out that something else is controlling me. You know, even if it's a good thing, something else is controlling me, and not HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not the Torah, and not me and my own Shlit'a. That's the. Okay, now let me just. Mikel kamocha nosei avon is the next part of the puzzle. Nosei avon. Nosei avon, always translated in the English as who is like you, who bears our iniquity. Whenever I read these English things, I look in the Hebrew to see what it means. Bears our iniquity. Mazel Tov. So I just want to. It's very, very deep, and it requires also some introduction to understand it. The simple translation of nosei is to carry. Nosei be'ol im chaver. I guess that's what bears mean. Bears means. Who carries our sin? So the Pashat Pshat, you know, like I learned from, I have to give Ivor Dover B'Shem Imrei. I learned from about 33 years ago from the bank manager of M&T in Western New York, the M&T Bank, because you know, after running an organization for a few years, so we got into a situation then that there was a number of checks that I thought I could cover and couldn't cover, and that was going to be, everything was going to fall apart. So I called the bank manager, and he said to me, "Rabbi, I know who you are. I'll carry you." Oh. I'll carry you. It's a bank expression. So I immediately said, "Oh, no say avon." No say avon. What does it mean on a Pshat level? What does it mean that he's going to carry me? That we understand that, you know, like your bank can't do business with people who bounce checks. It doesn't. But we understand you're not kiting checks. You're not you're doing it deliberately, and it's a temporary situation. It's a matzah that you're in. We cherish your business enough. We respect you enough that we'll look at the first 10 years, and we'll look at the next 10 years, and for these 2 weeks we'll carry you. That's the business touch of it, and it's actually the vernacular. It's actually the expression which is used. So what does it mean when HaKadosh Baruch Hu bears or carries our iniquity? That he's looking at that there's this idea of sort of a temporary insanity, if you will, which temporary can be for many years, but of a certain insanity that a person gets, you know, pulled into where they are doing the wrong things. You could just get dragged into a place. All of us, some at a very sort of like a very gilui level, like they're really doing wrong things. Robbing banks. What do they do? But it doesn't not always have the nerve to rob banks. So we do other things it's. So the question is, if when a Kadosh Baruch Hu looks at the Avera, this is part of the Mikel Kamocha Nושא עון. This is like the godless. The ultimate power is a Kadosh Baruch Hu who can switch us off at any moment. But he's not going to, bounce a check. Sorry, sorry, you messed up. And be really midasadin about it. And you can only be midasadin if you have the power to enact it. And Hashem has the power. But the nושא עון is looking at a bigger picture and having a certain amount of respect and faith in the human being and in the tzelem elikim and the elikus of the human being. And by having a certain respect for that elikus, realizing that this person may come out of this. And then what should I kill him for? Why should I paralyze his hand? Why should I, what if this person, I don't want to be trite, what if it becomes about tshuva, but I don't even mean like about tshuva in the folk sense of the word. What if a person can grow out of this and mature out of this? There is a certain, kind of a temporariness to the fact that a good person, you look, in relationships, again, even husband and wife relationships at home, so sometimes somebody is, one of the spouses is really not acting correctly, but is that doesn't necessarily mean they're bad. They're a bad person. Maybe they're doing a bad thing. So it becomes incumbent upon us to be nושא עון. In that sense, to be nושא עון. I'm saying mamish pshat, simple pshat, before we say anything deep. It's a similar concept to be dan l'kav schus in its true sense of the word. Because being dan l'kav schus, what it really means, you see, the normal way of learning dan l'kav schus is to come up with some kind of an incredible, almost ridiculous story, and say, like the famous story that they like to tell about a person who came to somebody's home to collect money, and I don't have any money, I can't pay my rent, I can't feed my children, I can't, and I said, but I was just to the airport and I saw you in the business class line, what do you, you're such a nebuch, what are you doing in the business class line? So the fellow said, business class line, because there was an old lady who couldn't carry her bags, so I ran over to take her bags. And a beautiful story, very good. How often does that happen? That's not it. Of course you have to be dan l'kav schus. But then there's a deeper level of dan l'kav schus where not just there's some kind of a crazy part of the story that I don't know. Could be, but probably not. Probably not. But there's more to the story that I realize in terms of what's going on in this person's life and this person's mind. And maybe this person, I'm just throwing out, maybe this person, before he goes and makes himself into a shmata to collect money for his family in front of 200 people, and goes to the nebuch, maybe he just needed that pampering. Maybe somebody paid his ticket and realized, this I can do for you, I can give you mileage. Who knows? But maybe it's a certain, inconsistency that the person needed. So that's a deeper thing. When people say things, I just said yesterday, a Rav in Los Angeles told me I was talking to him about a book that he wants to do. He told me such a remarkable story. I don't know which side of but he said to me when the spaceship went up, what was it, the Challenger went up and blew up. Was Challenger?
Yeah, Challenger.
Yeah, it blew up and all. So one of the people, they had a team of people, scientists, a chemist, so one of the people was supposed to be a science teacher, so a high school science teacher. They wanted a high school science teacher. So science teachers from all over the world applied for this position, this schus, to go up at the Challenger, be the science teacher. So a teacher came to school, and a science teacher, and one of his, this is a principal of Yaacov, so a top-notch science teacher, which the kids didn't like, came to school the next day and showed the papers where she applied to be the science teacher on board the Challenger, and but for the grace of God, she was so upset that she didn't get this position as the science teacher on the Challenger, Hashem and Fromm and all that. Really good science teacher, and she wasn't on the spaceship, and it blew up. So she was telling the kids a story. So one of the kids, in their chutzpah, said, "Too bad you were not. too bad you weren't." Yeah. Too bad they didn't pick you. That would have been a good thing, right? So one of the this fellow was telling me that he's the head of the Beis Yaacov. So he was telling me that what's the normal thing to get to the principal, throw the kid out of class, take the kid to the and instead the teacher, I guess a good science teacher, good teacher, he just thought about it for a second, like such an insult, really, this is such an insult. So she said to the kid, girl, why'd you say that? So she said quickly, she says, I'm sure that if you would have been on the thing, it wouldn't have blown up. Which was the opposite of what she was thinking. She didn't mean anything by it. So okay, good thing I didn't. Before I smacked her, I got it was like the ultimate compliment that the girl was giving. So okay, it's like another madrega being down the cops. So it's not a ridiculous story. Just like where is this person coming from? But then there's even a deeper part of it. I think the Chazon Ish said that today everybody's a tinuk shenishba. It's the ultimate, down the whole Klal Yisrael Kapskus. The whole Klal Yisrael Kapskus, it's not their fault. It's not just like a halakha, it is a halakha thing, it isn't the Chazon Ish in your day. It's a halachic point in Hilchos Shlit'a. But what it really is, it's a different way of looking at the whole Klal Yisrael. What do you want from them? Now, he wasn't a Hasidic Rebbe, he wasn't the Kedushas Levi, he wasn't, the Barditchever. He halachically said that I'm looking at a world today, 1949, 1950. Think about everything was going on and everything that Jews went through at that time. And he said that, look, we have to give a different halachic status to the entire Klal Yisrael. By the way, that one little tshuva of the Chazon Ish brought the kiruv movement into the Litvish world. Without question. One sentence. What do you want from them? And if a person is a tinuk shenish, but there's a mitzvah to be pound to him. It's as simple as that. So we're not going not Lubavitchers, not nothing. Just it's not they're tinuk shenishba. So that's like understanding, having done this call it's not just coming up with some kind of an incredible story. It's a geder of noisei avain. Noisei avain. The geder of noisei avain is to be able to see the beginning of it yesterday and be able to see tomorrow and then deal with today. So that's I believe the simple pshat in the pasuk. The Tomer Devorah, which is unto itself very challenging, and this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu does. If he would look at us for the moment, miyamid lefanecha badin, and I'm to carry it to the human level, if we would live like that, really, of not being nosei avon, the possibility of any relationship is almost not there. It's almost nil, because who can then you become a power broker, and you go back to yesterday's Torah. It's almost nil, the possibility of a relationship, if you can't see an entire picture and understand that, okay, al tefayes adam b'shas kaisei. Al tefayes adam b'shas kaisei. Person's angry right now. It's temporary insanity. Don't even try. Just have patience. Work. Gamzu yavar. Chakei ad sheyavar haza'am. Doesn't mean a person has to be abused. It doesn't mean a person has to al tefayes. Don't even try. Understand it for what it is. Like a person is. It's not just a person. Maybe they're drunk. Maybe they're on drugs. Maybe they're having a bad chemical day or something. But it's a yeah.
I just feel like it's very similar to what we were saying yesterday about Neil, that he's accepting everything because he trusts. I mean, We were drawing the distinction.
It's not very similar, it's the same thing. In other words,
So
mi
what
kel
is the
kamocha,
sound?
and now we're defining it. Klal u'prat u'kal. So the
what's
kel
the sound?
kamocha is that he has the power. He has the power to cut off. Why? How is he not? That's what I'm saying. It all comes back to yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
How is he not using his power? Mi kamocha be'elim Hashem, mi kel kamocha. How is he not using? How is he not being political about it? The answer is because nושא עון. He's not using his power. He's understanding things with a bigger hecker. So we have a little more detail, if you will. It's a different midah, but it's the same midah. You see the pasuk. It's a explanation, if you will, of the mi kel kamocha.
It's a 1 meter, 2 meters. But then it gets close to something that's only 1 meter.
Yeah. Again, it's not using your power, but not reacting. Midah 1 is not reacting but acting, and nושא עון is the way you look at another person. Why? In other words, now it's incumbent upon us to define what is the right thing. Once we know that we're not just, it's not the right thing for me to squash you just because I have power and you don't have power. But now the second question is, how do I define the right thing? How do I know what's the right thing? So if you look at Hashem in this way, and emulate that, the answer is to be nושא עון. And nושא עון, in my view, is very similar to being down the kapskus. Something, just if I could just, a small tangent, something that I've for years, like the people misunderstand. Rabbi Cutler, Zechet Tzadik Levracha, who I'm in almost no way a Talmud of, and on some levels, I found it very difficult to understand many of the shitas that he had in molding, which he did very nicely, the Torah jury of the United States of America. But one of the things that he was against was being a rabbi. And because he was, it was don't be a rabbi. Be a Rosh Yeshiva, be a Rosh Kollel. So, so what happened was that the monopoly, if you will, on the rabbinate was, became in YU. Not a bad thing, but it would be a better thing if there was a plethora. I mean, imagine if 1,000, Talmidei Chacham from Lakewood would be Rabbanim all over the United States and all over the world, So it would be like, it would be also mostly something, right? But what it became, which always bothered me, it became a kind of a split, like the Rosh Yeshivas by and large are Lakewood graduates, and the rabbis are YU graduates, or maybe Tarvadas, that type of a thing. I'm just about making a cloud. But if you're ma'ayid into, I once had a conversation with Rabbi Yeruch Bolshin, grandson, or Baron Cutler, grandson-in-law. When you're ma'ayid into what he said, again, I'm miyani mani, I'm just being a sociologist here. But what he said was that it's all wrong. The distribution of power is all wrong in the American rabbinate. He came from Europe, and he said the whole thing is wrong because instead of the Rav, as supposedly it was in Europe, leading the Kehillah is really leading the Rav because they're paying them what they consider to be ridiculously huge amounts of money. They feel it's their responsibility. By the way, they're not wrong. I don't think they're wrong. They feel it's their responsibility to have meetings and discuss every moment of the rabbi's life. And is he doing this? And he's not doing this? And how many times did he pay a shiva call? And how many times? So even though many of the things that the Balabatim say are probably correct, and you could even argue that it keeps the rabbi straight, if you will. And we know many rabbis are not straight, but the concept of the switching of power was something that he said you can't build Torah with that type of a thing. You can't build Torah, if the people, in other words, the rabbi is supposed to be telling the Torah, theoretically, I guess the rabbi is supposed to be telling the people what to do. People are supposed to be telling the rabbi what to do. It's on a personal level. When this clicked in my mind, I left the United States for having it like that. I saw it, and I had probably like one of the nicest group of people that could possibly be, but there's nothing close with them as that. But there's something wrong with that structure. And what Rabarn, that's all meant. I mean, I would, and Yaacov would say there's other answers to change it Gufa. But what he saw was a much bigger cook than everybody else saw. In the sense that there's something wrong with all. If you're a Rosh Yeshiva, so it's your yeshiva. You're doing what you're doing. You're teaching the way you think it should be taught. You know, if you're a Hasidic Rebbe, you're a Hasidic Rebbe. So that makes sense also. You know, but you know, where have we ever found this kind of like bottom up leadership model? So why am I saying this? I'm saying this because like power is a very scary thing. When you take it even on a macro level, the use and therefore abuse of power, and almost any use of power is an abuse of power. The use of power is really switching around the dynamic which does not deserve to be switched around, or should not be switched around. And that's the Nakuda. So if you carry that, you start with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you look at Klal Yisrael, and you carry that into your own homes with your own children. Yes, you can lord over your children. You're bigger than them. You're stronger than them. You've got the money. You've got the allowance. You've got everything. You know, you've got everything over your children. You cannot feed your children, but that's abuse. It's abuse. Now, it doesn't mean you shouldn't be b'chadach your children. Not saying, but the lording over them, the powering over them, is wrong, and that's to be kel kamocha. And then we take it to the next step of nosay avon, and the nosay avon is to see the bigger picture. How do you not use the power? The answer is to see the bigger picture of, and try to work on that level. Try to work on a bigger level. So that requires a huge amount of patience. Let's just learn a few lines because it's already time. Anyway, tomorrow, Baruch Hashem, there's no shiur, bris for my grandson, which everyone's welcome to come at Avos at 9 o'clock. I've got to be there at 8:45, so it's not going to work out. And then Friday there's no shiur, so we'll resume again Sunday. But noisei avain, hareza, just a couple of lines, hareza gadol me ha-koidem. This is even bigger than the first midah. Sharei lo yasa adam avain, and he's taking us to almost a completely deeper place than I just went. I give the positive shot. Lo yasa adam avain shla yivra mashchis. Kidisnan oiver aver achas koinoloi kategor achas. When a person does an aver, they actually create a mashchis, which Yirtzeh Hashem on Sunday I will understand. But it's that mashchis. When you say where is that mashchis? Where does he live? The kategor. Now when we think of kategor, when we learn Pirkei Avos, we think of a court in Shamayim, and there's a prosecutor, and there's what's the other guy called? Defendant. Defense attorney. Yeah. And you do an aver, you create a kategor. I would like to just plant this in your mind that the kategor is not up there, the kategor is in here. This is where the kategor is. Barloi mashchis echad, that one does an aver, one creates within themselves a destructive force. That's what it means. That's what the words mean. The mashchis and the kategor is not in Shemayim, the kategor is within us. It means, let me just say this, it means that whenever a person does something which violates what they are, it creates a conflict within. If a good person, kills somebody, creates a conflict. After wars in this country, psychologists take good geschmack Jewish kids and tell them to kill somebody. One soldier I went to visit at the hospital was crying to me that he had to use his weapon. Self-defense, it's a kategor. Okay, Hashem also, Kach Kozar Hashem, but there's a certain mashchis which is created, and the mashchis is not up there. It's not out of a din, because in din you win. It's a psychological, if you will, spiritual, psycho-spiritual phenomenon where as soon as I do anything wrong, I have violated myself, whether I spoke lashon hara, whether I shot somebody, whether I robbed you, whether I was dishonest, whether I was deceitful. I've done something wrong, and now I've got to contend with that force. Because what happens is, and this is all I want to say now, because it gets very Kabbalistic, if you will, but on a simple level, there's an immediate phenomenon of cognitive dissonance which sets in, where first time it's a conflict, second time
Gets easier.
it's mutter, third time becomes a mitzvah. The Gemara doesn't go that far, but because of mitzvah, how do you make peace? How do you make peace with the fact that I just killed somebody, except for to rationalize it in your own mind and then make your mind crazy? So what happens is that when we do something wrong, not only have we done something wrong and it stands on its own, it's its own problem, its own merit, what happens is it begins to create a cancer and a mashchus, within the spirituality and the neshama of a person. And now we got to contend with that. So we haven't yet explained Nosei Avos, but I just want to bring the concept out that an avera affects us beyond the avera. Nasaloi mashchis. Every time a person does an avera, or layasa adam avoid shula yivra mashchis. There's no such thing as doing an avera which doesn't create a mashchis. I'm telling you that if nobody's looking and you move some muksa, or you do something, you make the air conditioner higher or lower, you talk lashon hara or whatever your avera might be, we all do averas, but whatever your avera might be, there's a mashchis here. All of a sudden I've got to start, the Gemara says, that if you see a Talmud Chacham doing avera balayla, lo yaharach rav kiva lo yoseh tshuva. So the Veld says he definitely wrote a tshuva by the morning. He took care of it.
Baruch Hashem for tshuva.
Yeah, he wrote a tshuva. So there's this mechanism of the mashchis which is much worse than the avera itself. Is much worse than the avera itself. And this is the line 1 of Bays of Nosei Avos. Thank you very much for coming.